Okay, we are in I think it's the 11th share on Pesach, Hilchas Pesach. We're middle of Siman Kuf Yud Ches, the middle of Siv Gimel. We're up to where it says Kol Haminim. So Kol Haminim, right in the middle of it's the third small paragraph in Siman Kuf Yud in Siv Gimel. Let's go. Kol Haminim sheyetzim ba'en mitztarfin zem zelikazayis. Any type of vegetable that you're allowed to use, and here we're talking about the maror. So any type that you're allowed to use will join together. Yeah, in other words, you could have a few different types technically, which is actually what we do, right? We use the lettuce leaves, we use romaine lettuce, and we also use the actual horseradish. And v'yetzin bein ba'alin bein ba'klachin. You could use, meaning when you measure it, you're going to measure it together with both the alin are the leaves and also the klachin are the stems. So you're going to be able to use basically the whole thing. You could use the whole thing. But what you don't use is you don't use the roots. Okay, the roots of the vegetable of this thing that you're using for maror is not the same as the other parts of it. And here we're talking about the small little roots that basically spread on all different sides of the plant of whatever it is. In other words, in the ground. So horseradish, for example, has these little, it's a root vegetable, so it's in the ground and it has these tiny little things. So those wouldn't be counted. The lettuce itself, I guess when you buy it already, it doesn't have anything, but technically it has some roots also. That's how it grows. So all those things wouldn't count, but everything else does. However, the root that we would call, I guess, like the middle stem, the main one, the leaves are all coming out of it. Even though it's in the ground, still that would be counted as if it's part of the actual thing, and therefore that you would be able to use. That would not be a problem. It's part of the stem. It's not part of the roots. When we call makan toiv yeser litel ha'olim. But if you're using this romaine, let's say lettuce or whatever it is, or anything that's growing, the part that you should really use is the part that's outside of the ground. So part of it is inside the ground. That's better not to use. The part that would grow out, that's the best. Because some people would say, even though it's not the halacha, but some people would say that if it's in the ground, it's a root. Even though it's not really, because the roots are the small little pieces that are getting the nutrients from the ground, from the earth. But nevertheless, some people say that. So the best thing would be is to take the part that everyone agrees is good, and this way you don't have any issue. Fine. So now, last paragraph over here of Gimel. If you're using the leaves, in other words, if you're using the type of leafy vegetable, you have to make sure that it's still moist, it's still fresh, the leaves. So in other words, there's different parts to this lettuce, romaine head, or whatever you call it, head of lettuce. So the leaves themselves, they need to be fresh. But the stem of it, so that that one is allowed to be a little bit. That one is allowed to be a little bit no, it could be both lachin and yeveshim. It could be a little bit dried out also. Now Rashi said, not Rashi. They quote from the Alter Rebbe, "Ve'ein tzarich leimar kumushim," and for sure, if it's not dry, but it's a little withered. Like remember, we had this before when we were talking about about the lulav and all the minim. We said there's a difference between yavush and kamush, and if it's different levels of rotting or whatever. So kumushim would mean where it starts to sort of wither, but it's still moist. The color is somewhat still there, so then for sure it's fine. Even if it's semi-dry, it would still be okay. Baruch Hashem, we live in a world where hopefully that this right now is never usually a concern. Generally, you have proper types of stuff, and hopefully it should always remain that way with Hashem's brachas. But it's good to know that these things, in a situation, maybe you go on Mitzrayim, you go on Shulchas one day. They used to send us to Russia and Ukraine. I don't think they do anymore, but Americans. But wherever they send you, you might end up in one Yehupitzville somewhere, not in comfortable Phoenix, and you might not be able to get all the same products. So it's always good to know. It's always good to know the options that are there, even though hopefully you never knew that. You never need that. Now, part of the reason is the Alter Rebbe also explains why there's a difference. Who cares if it's the root or the leaf? What's the difference? So he says because the root of it is much thicker, meaning the stem. The stem is much thicker. So even if it's semi-dry or semi-withered, the flavor is still there. The leaves that are like mamish very thin, so once they get a little bit sort of, stricken or whatever the word would be in English, whatever, when they start to change a little bit, so then the flavor completely changes. So no, yeah, but not just withered. I'm saying anything. Even a little bit dried up. No, that's something else. But no, that's something else. That's the natural flavor. But I'm saying is that if the taste, if it that when you have like a big, let's say, I'll give you an example. You have, I don't know if this is a great example, but somewhat. You have, let's say, meat and chicken, right? We just had a big Pesach order, so I had to figure out how to fit all the freezers and everything today. So there's a difference. So meat, let's say, you could put in the fridge, you could defrost, and you could refrost, and then you could freeze it again later because it's a more tougher type of thing. It's just the way it is. Chicken would, let's say, you want to keep it frozen for longer because it's more delicate. So the leaves, the leaves are more delicate. So if they change their, if they change their flavor a little bit, then you have more of an issue. Mashinkin, the stem, it's thicker. It could handle a little bit more. Fine. And this is an important part of the halacha that people don't always realize. Loy b'muvushalim. You're not allowed to use for maror a vegetable that was cooked, or kvushin, or that's kavush. Kavush means anything that's soaked for 24 hours. According to halacha, it's as if it was cooked. Now, why is that important? So here they bring from the Alter Rebbe. There are some people, they soak the maror in water, to take away the bitterness. You need to take it out from the water at some point during 24 hours, and then you can put it back. But you need to remove it once. If you don't remove it, if it sits in the water for 24 hours straight, it's called kavush. It's as if it's cooked, and you're not allowed to use it for maror. Wait, hold on. Wait, one second. Now, okay, we'll leave it simple. There's some that say that it depends on what type of liquid it is, but for pashtos, even if it's in water for 24 hours, it becomes considered cooked, and you're no longer allowed to use it. So some people will check the maror, right, and stuff like that. So you have to know that when you do check the maror, first of all, we dry it. We don't want it to be too wet after you use it for a few reasons. Number one, part of it gets used with the matzah, so you want to make sure it's dry. But also in the background, there's always this issue, which not always is a problem. It really depends on when you have a 3-day Yom Tif and Friday and Shabbos is the first day, meaning that Pesach is Sunday. Because then you're going to do all this washing stuff before, and you don't want it to be soaking in water. So you have to be careful to make sure it's dry. But this is an issue that could come up, and people want to soak it if it's very buggy or things like that. So you can't just leave it there for too long because then you have an issue. Yeah, you were first, I think. Yeah.
You gotta take it fully out.
Yeah. Has to come completely out, and then you can put it back in. Otherwise, anything that's inside of water for 24 hours would be cooked, would be considered cooked. Samach, you had a question?
How long do you need to
Without names. What?
How long do you need to take it out?
Just even for a second. You just have to break. It's only 24 hours consistently.
Why though? Because like if I'm cooking something in an oven for an hour and I take it out once I turn right back in, it's
According to Allah, right? But according to Allah, kavush, which means soaking or pickling, needs to be soaking for 24 hours straight. So if you break it in the middle, then it will be okay.
Take it out once I
Doesn't matter. Then it's good. You restarts the clock, and if it restarts the clock, you're good.
Physically, it doesn't show.
You're saying the flavor may change. It's true. The flavor might change, but it won't be called cooked. So if the flavor changes and it's no longer sharp, then you have another issue that we said it should be a little sharp. That's something else. But the cooking part, it's not called cooked halachically. If you take, let's just say, a piece of flesh falls into your cold milk, right? So it's fine, technically. You take out the piece of meat, and you're good. It's right. You don't have to do anything else. Okay, we're keeping it simple because it could be it's more complicated, but keeping it simple. But if it sits there for 24 hours, then it's as if it's cooked inside. But if you took it out once in the middle, then it's not considered cooked. Then you could take it out, even though it was there for 25 hours, but it wasn't straight. Okay, someone else had a question? No? Okay, weiter. Sif Dalet, sorry. Moving along, charesis. When it comes to the charesis, salach shetiya ava needs to be thick. The reason why you make it thick is because it's zecher letit. You want it to be similar to the cement that the Yidden were using when they had to build things in Mitzrayim. And therefore, when it's going to come the time that you're going to dip the maror into the charesis, so what you do is yishpech letoichoi yayin. You pour into it. You pour into it a little bit of wine, or some sort of chaymetz adumim, like a vinegar, which we don't use. So it's obviously wine. And the reason why you do that is shetiya raka. You want it to be a little bit softer. In other words, it's hard originally, but then you want it to be a little bit softer. Why? Because zecher ledam. Because you want it to be, number one, similar to remind you of the dam. So that's why you're going to put in a little bit of red wine, and over here, or chaymetz adumim. And over here, by the way, it does not mean the dam of the kids that were shechted that we spoke about yesterday, which was the 4 cups. Over here, it means the dam of the makkah. The first makkah was dam. So therefore, it's a little bit different. Okay, but either way, V'gam shetehedu uya litboba, and also you want it to be softer so that you should be able to dip things into it. If it's a thick glob and it's very, a consistency that's very thick, then you can't dip anything inside. What? Say it? Yeah, yeah. So then dipping in won't do anything. You need it to be able to dip inside, and therefore it needs to have a little bit more consistency. So the way it says in Shulchan Aruch is yesh l'rachechui b'mashke odon. You want it to be softened with a red liquid. Okay. Now, why don't we do this right away? Why don't we do this right away? In other words, when you come to the table, have your charosis already mixed with red wine. Why are you waiting till later to mix the wine right before you dip it in? So over here, the way I saw somewhere is that first you want to go through the Haggadah, and you want to talk about the different things that the Yidden had to go through, all the challenges that they had to go through. And then, just like it was in the actual story, the shibud happened a little bit softer in the beginning, and then it progressively got worse. So here also we kind of do it in stages as well. Okay, but either way, now look at Dalet on the bottom where they quote from the Alter Rebbe. I'm sorry, where they quote Arminig. And over here they're bringing from Sefer HaMenagim the way it was quoted from the Rebbe, the way I think the Rebbe said he saw the Frierdiker Rebbe doing it, and the Rebbe also used to do it this way, which is like this: La'atibo b'charosis. When it comes to dipping into the charosis, you're doing the morah into the charosis. Yesh lishtamesh b'shyore hayayin the dalet koisis. You should use the leftovers of the wine of one of the koisis, right? So it's not the actual dalet koisis because you didn't have dalet koisis yet, but at that point you already had two. So you take the wine, hainu, and what does that look like? Lases ma'at charosis b'toich hayayin shebetzalachas. You take the charosis and you put it into the plate that was on the bottom of your becher, shebetachtis hakois, and that's how you mix it. So in other words, you don't pour wine on top of your kaira into the charosis that's on your kaira. You take some of the charosis and you put it into the plate that was from your becher. The hainu lemorah, and this you're going to use to dip your morah. Yesh l'shayr charesis yevesha. You have to leave a little bit of charesis that's dry, and the reason is b'li yayin, because that's going to be la'atibul shel koirach. Because that you're going to dip your koirach into it. Now, when you dip your koirach, you don't dip the matzah, by the way. You dip the chazeres or whatever, the maror chazeres that has the chrein inside of it as well, and you shake it off, and then you put it inside the matzah. So you're not dipping the matzah anyways. But either way, we don't want that to have any liquid on it. So therefore, it's two separate things. You take a little bit, you put it into the bottom of the becher that you use for the maror, and then you leave some on your kaira. You leave some still on your kaira, and that you're going to use for the chazeres when you use it for koirach. So another question, yeah. Okay, weiter. Now, yesh lase. So what's the ingredients? There's a lot of different ingredients and how people make it, a lot of reasons why. So let's see what he says here. Yesh lase is a charoises mipeinoi shenimshul lem knesses Yisrael. The ingredients that we make the charoises out of are fruits that are compared, or the yidden are compared to these fruits. Going, for example, te'enin, figs. Shenamar, it says in the pasuk, ha-te'ena chonta pageha. That the figs, chonta means like they sprouted, pageha means like the pagim, or the buds, like the small little things. So the te'enim, the figs, the yidden are compared to that. These are psukim and shir hashirim, where Shlomo HaMelech is comparing the love of the Eibishter to the Yidden, and he uses these things. So number one, the Yidden are compared to te'enim, to figs. The egoizim, and to other types of nuts. Shenemar, like it says in the pasuk, el ginas egoiz, to a garden or a garden of egoizim. Utmarim, and to dates. Shenemar, like it says in the pasuk, also el b'tamar, that will sprout or grow like a tamar. V'rimoinim, shenemar, like it says, kepelach harimain, that the Yidden are compared to a slice of a rimain. By the way, the name of a sefer, pelach harimain, is a sefer from the Kilo Parachet, the sefer Maimarim. I think he was one of the only ones that had a shus to even say chassidus, only chassid. But either way, so it's like a slice of a rimain. V'tapuchim, and also apples. Zeichel mashakosov tachas hatapuach or This is to also, again, the same thing that the Yidden over there, it says tachas hatapuach or that it was under the apple tree. So again, the Yidden are compared to an apple tree, and the reason why we care about the apple tree, because the women who are giving birth to the Yidden who are going to be born in Mitzrayim, so they were sitting under this apple tree, and they didn't have any. They were able to give birth without any pain. ushkedim, and almonds. Al shem sheshakat hakadosh baruch hu ala ketz la'asayse. That Hashem hurries. The word shakat also comes from hurried. Like it says in the Nevuah, we read in one of the Haftarahs that by the Nevuah of Yirmiyahu that it says that it was a makel shakid. It was an almond stick, a stick that grew almonds, but it happened very quickly. So here also. So fine. The point is that there's a whole list of ingredients of things that people use to make the charoises. Now, if you look, so now let's do a little bit more, and then we'll do what our minig is, because this is not our minig. V'tzarich laseis b'toichoi tavlinim hadoimim leteven. People also put into this charoises different spices that are similar or look similar to wheat. So, for example, kigoyin kinomin, cinnamon. Cinnamon is like a stick. Vizangvil is ginger. It also has like a stringy. These are things that can't crush into small pieces. They become like stringy. And therefore, it has like a certain string consistency similar to straw. And this would remind us of the straw that the Yidden had to use when they were making the cement. Now, okay, so we don't do that. We'll see soon why. B'Shabbos, you know what? Let's skip that for a second. Let's go to the bottom. Hey, Mikama Shanim. This is a quote from the Rebbe in the Haggadah, where the Rebbe writes, in the Sefer Menagim, but I think it's in the Haggadah as well, where the Rebbe writes, Mikama Shanim, for many years already, Minagenu loy lakachas kida v'kinamen. The minig is that we no longer take cinnamon and ginger. And why not? Michshash taruvis chametz. Because of a concern that there's a mixture that could have happened, I guess the way they used to grow or whatever. So what do we do, Rat? What we do is tapuchim, apples, agasim, our pears, vegazim, and our nuts. So our three ingredients nowadays that we use are apples, pears, and nuts. That's it for the charesis. So even though it doesn't look so pretty, it doesn't taste so bad. It's apples, pears, and nuts. It's not bad at all, actually. So, but by the time you get to it, no one's interested in eating it. It's like 3 days later. What? To which? So which ingredients? Nuts. Let's say nuts. So then you don't put in nuts. What? First of all, there's different types of nuts. Not everyone is allergic to all nuts. So you could do, if you're allergic to all nuts, you don't put in nuts. That's it. So you do apples and pears. That's it. What? That they eat it, right? They know the good stuff. No, but what? What if? So all three. So don't eat it. Don't dip it in. I don't know. So I mean, it's a limited amount. You could use dates or figs. I guess if you peel it, if someone thinks they have to peel, if you don't think you have to peel, then you could use figs or dates. I mean, you could do different things. Our minig is that we don't use that. The only things that we don't use are cinnamon and ginger, but it doesn't say anything about not using, let's say, figs, dates, or pomegranates. So technically, you could use those. Technically, right? It's not our minig, but if someone's allergic, then you go with the ikra halacha. You have to, you want to populate your seder plate. But now, b'Shabbos, what happens if it's Shabbos? So on Shabbos, there is a problem with doing this. So let's see. B'Shabbos lo yishpoich es hayayin or hachometz latoicha charesis. On Shabbos, you should not pour wine or vinegar into the charesis. Why? Because this is an issue of lush. Lush is kneading. It looks like making a dough. So we don't make a thick mixture on Shabbos. That's called lush. Okay, so we don't make a thick mixture. This is a thick mixture. So what should you do? So kitzarich laseis b'shino, you have to do it in a way of a shino. You have to do something different. We'll talk about it maybe in Shabbos, but there's usually a double shino you have to do. Two things. V'Rabbeinu kasav sheizor lalachei be'erev Shabbos. The Alter Rebbe similarly writes that you should really do this before Shabbos. So if it's Friday night, you should mix it in before Shabbos. V'him shachav, but if you didn't, yirak choy b'Shabbos ayidei shinoi. You should do it with a shinoi. So what would be a shinoi? What would that look like? So one thing would be to put the wine first. Usually when you make a mixture, you put in the solid ingredients and you put the liquid in later. That's just the normal way to do it. So to do it a shinoi, you would put the wine first and then the ingredients after. And then also, instead of mixing it in a normal way, you would use your finger. Or in the Alter Rebbe, I think they're mentioned maybe the back of a knife or something. What? Your feet? But that's normal. No, I'm joking, yeah. You could use your finger. That's already enough. Those are two shinois. And we'll talk about when we get to Hilchas Shabbos, there's other shinoim also, but okay. So the Kitzur says, the Kitzur says what you should do is you should put the charesis into the wine, which is what we mentioned. excuse me, to put the wine first, which by the way we're doing anyways, because you're putting the charesis into your becher, into the plate of your becher, and the wine is there already. So we're already doing that. And then you can mix it with your finger, like we said, or you can hold the kli and mix the kli a little bit. So you're not actually mixing it with your fingers. Actually, okay. The point is, it's important to think again. And not these. This you don't have to worry about it. But it's just interesting to keep in mind how many things could sort of balance out. You're trying to make charesis and how you mix it and which one you're mixing, and because you don't want the liquid to be the one touches the matzah, and you have to make a shina if it's Shabbos and all that stuff. So you have to keep it in mind. Now, the next thing also is vesmei hamelech. What about the salt water? So afilu k'shaloicha Yom Tov b'Shabbos, even if it's not Shabbos, yasem out of Yom Tov. You should do it before Yom Tov. So nowadays, their mitzvah sells salt water for $5 a little tube. So, but you don't want to do that, right? You could just make your own salt water. It's not a big deal. So, but you should really make before. Now, Shabbos, you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. Why not? Okay, let's first finish the sif and then we'll talk. Now, let's say you're making it on Yom Tov itself. You forgot to do it before. So tzarich la'asoyse b'shinoi. Here also you have to do it with a shinoi. What would a shinoi be? Shehiten tchila es hamayim v'achar kach hamelech. In this case, he says you could put the water first and then you put the salt thereafter. Now we add from the Alter Rebbe that according to Alter Rebbe, it looks like you could do it on Yom Tov. It's something that you need. But if it's Shabbos, Yasem Erev Shabbos, you should do it before. And if you don't do it before Shabbos, Yasem At, you should make just a very little bit. The Ein Tzarech B'Shina, and you don't have to do a Shina. Now, what does this mean? What's going on over here? So over here, the problem is like this: we don't make like salt water or a brine on Shabbos because it looks like what's called ibud oires. So ibud oires is how they would process hide and make it into leather. And one of the things that they do is they soak it in a brine, in a salt type of thing. So we don't make salt water on Shabbos. That's the halacha, or at least not more than what's necessary or what's needed. Now, but what you need for this immediate meal, technically you could. So we would prefer to do it before. We would prefer to do it before so you don't have any concern at all. You made too much, what happens if you left over? But if you didn't, so Yom Tif, you could for sure do it. And in Shabbos also, if you forgot to do it before, which you should ideally do it before, but if you forgot, you can make just a little bit, just for amount that you need for that day. Fine. Yeah, weiter? Sif hey. It's not so long.
Very long.
It's not
Oh, it's very long.
okay, Sif hey. Mishacharav. We don't have a lot of time, and we want to try to finish as much Pesach as we can. What? Okay, let's go back. Since the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Tiknu Chachamim sheyiu ala shulchan b'shas amidas haggadah shnei minei tafshilin. The Chachamim said, in addition to all the things on your kaira, when you say the Haggadah, you should also have two cooked foods. Echad zeichel lekarban Pesach. One will remind us of the karban Pesach, which we can no longer bring. The echad zeichel lekarban Chagiga, and one will remind us of the karban Chagiga, which we also could no longer bring. Shayu makrivim bisman shabis hamikdash kayam. These were the karbanis that would be brought in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. But no, so the minig became she'echad mina tavshilim yiyah basar. One of them should be some sort of flesh. The yiyah and the authentic minig, meaning the way it's supposed to be that most people do it is. It should be from the perek, from the part of the leg of the animal, hanikra zroya, which is, right, what people call a shank bone. And this should be, but it's from the zroya, which is the front leg. To remind us that Hashem took us out with an outstretched arm. So you take from what's called the zroya of the animal. And it should be roasted on top of coals, which is the same way that the Korban Pesach was, Zecher lePesach, Shahaya Tzli Eish, which is exactly how it was done. Now, what's our minig? We don't do that. So our minig is in the bottom, he brings in Vav. We bring, instead of from an animal, we prefer no animal parts, because we want it to look nothing like the Korban Pesach. So therefore, we use from the neck of a chicken. And we also have a diuk that we don't want to eat it after either, even though it's a chicken and not a meat. Why not? We do that because we don't want it to look similar or be similar or anything that has anything to do with the Korban Pesach. So we don't eat roasted foods, meaning roasted meat, the 2 nights of the Seder. And we times that for the same reason, to make it very dissimilar to the Korban Pesach and to remind us to stay far away. We remove almost all the meat, that's on the bone. So most of it you'll peel off, you'll take it off, and you'll have just almost like the bone with a little bit of flesh on it, but really not so much. That's our minig. Now, so that's number one. Number one is what we call the zroya, and that's going to be, it used to be the actual zroya of the animal. For us, it's usually the neck bone without any of the flesh on it. Vashenia, what's the other cooked food that's reminding us? That's going to be a beya, an egg. Mishum de beya b'loshen arami beya, because in Hebrew it's spelled beitza, but it's pronounced the Aramaic way, which is beya. Kaloimar de boy rachmana lemifrik yisana bidra miramama. And the reason is the word beya sounds like deba'i. Deba'i means, as you see the translation, he puts over there sheratza, that Hashem wanted. That Hashem wanted, sheratza Hashem liftei seisano b'zei netuya, that Hashem wanted, there was a will to redeem us with an outstretched hand, so therefore we do the same thing. Now, over here he brings that the way it's made could either be roasted or cooked in water. But our minig is, if you look in the bottom, Zion, they bring again from the Alter Rebbe, from the Rebbe, where he says, "Minagenu bebeya mevusheles anchet tiskashen." Our minig is that we use an egg that's cooked, meaning in water, until it becomes hard boiled. That's our minig. But other people had different minhagim. Some would roast it, which means over a fire without water. There's other different ways. Now, by the way, we also keep the what do you call it on it as well. We also keep the peels on it. Now, part of the reason is because number one, if you have it for a different night, so then you can't leave it overnight without shells. So that's number one, because of a ruach ra. Now there are those who say that maybe there's no ruach ra because it's Pesach night and it's Leil Shemurim, but it's not so simple because you're not eating it that night, you're eating it another night. So either way, we leave the shell. So we leave the shell on. That's part of the reason, but also that's just the minute the way it is. Some people break it. They bang it on the table just so it shouldn't roll all over the place. So I've seen that. I've seen people that didn't want to break it. So whatever. But either way, we do leave the shell on. Which, by the way, the shell on makes it better that it won't roll around as much if that's what you're looking for. Meaning without it, it's just a round thing. It's hard to place it. But if you could, let's say, bang it down a little bit and give it a little bit of like a flat surface, it will stay strong. Yeah, you had a question? But what? Our minig is we use the hard one. Technically, if it's edible, I imagine you could. I don't see. It has to be cooked. Right, it has to be cooked.
Why don't we wear
it? Needs to be hard boiled.
Yes or no?
I'll tell you. We'll talk about it later. What? Okay, you got a question? That's not. Yeah, but I'm trying to stick to what we're doing now. We'll get there later. That's not. We're going to come to there later. Yeah. You got a question? What? I know, but he's screaming out, and I don't want to answer it. And it's a sif that's going to come up later. Okay, let's go further. V'tzarich litzloison. You ever read the words? It's not. It's a strange song. Okay, but anyways, v'tzarich litzloisa. V'tzarich litzloison ulevashla me'erev Yom Tov beidem. This should really be cooked or baked before Yom Tov. You don't really bake or cook anything on Yom Tov that you could have done before. It's only if there's a preference to having it done on Yom Tov. Now, v'im shachach. Could you stop, please? V'im shachach. Shabbos. Let's say you forgot, or it's Shabbos, and now you can't cook it. So Yitzla, I'm sorry, not that it's Shabbos now, that it was Erev Yom Tov was Shabbos. So Yitzla v'yivash lo'isam b'layla. So do it right away that night. But now there's a condition. The condition is you have to eat it that night. Now, according to the Rebbe, we eat it during the Suda anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But if you are going to make it that night, you cannot make it for the second Seder. So you have to make one or two, and you have to eat it that night. Otherwise, you can't do it on Yom Tif, yeah? Now, by the way, one of the reasons, it's interesting because some people say, why do we use an egg? So some people say the reason why we use an egg is because it's zecher, almost like l'churban, like we're remembering the Beis HaMikdash, and then we don't have the Beis HaMikdash anymore, as we mentioned, the karbanos, so therefore we use an egg that has that similarity. But the Rebbe wasn't so happy with that because the Rebbe says that they used an egg, or they at least had a cooked dish on the table, even by the Beis HaMikdash. So it wasn't only for that reason, and the Rebbe says there's another reason as well, which is also for the Karban Chagiga, I guess, but also once it was for the Karban Chagiga, after the Churban, I guess we have a piece of the Karban Chagiga, and after the Karban, the Beis HaMikdash wasn't there anymore, so now it's Zeicher the Churban, and now we use an egg. Same thing the second night. If you didn't cook it before Yom Tif, so you can't cook, like we said, from the first night to the second night. So instead, you cook on the second night separately, and then and you eat it that during that second day. You're not supposed to cook from one Yom Tif day for another Yom Tif day, and not from Yom Tif for the weekday. And the problem is that you don't have any roasted meat during the two nights. So you have to eat it specifically by day. Again, we don't eat it at all, so we don't have that concern either. Even though you're going to be roasting it before Yom Tif, you shouldn't throw it away after. Even though you roasted it, meaning before Yom Tif, still you should try to keep it and maybe be able to eat it during the second day of Yom Tif or something like that. Again, our minhag is that we don't do it at all, so we don't have any of those issues. You had a question? You had a question?
That is answered.
Okay. It's 3:55 now. What we're going to do is